who have enthralled audiences, young and old. Indian startups from the media and entertainment sector are also present to showcase their technological prowess and pitch to the world from the world of AVGC, along with the strong delegation of animation professionals from the sector. The celebration of India at Cannes and the recognition of our cinematic excellence the world over is set to manifest the country into the content hub of the world. Today, the flavor, the choice, and narrative has shifted from the Eden in the west and settled in the east. India's journey has been beautifully captured and narrated through cinema. Indian cinema has played a crucial role and portrayed our fight for independence, be it through turbulent times and in our triumphs. Today, the media and entertainment sector in India is a significant contributor not only to the creative economy, but also for projecting India's soft power abroad. Our government has envisioned and spearheaded major initiatives over the last 8 years to boost co-production, as it was mentioned in the film now, to boost co-productions, film shoots and film facilitations in India. States such as Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh and other have taken the lead through film facilitation policies and providing co-production opportunities. In 2018, we had officially designated audio-visual services as one of the 12 champion sectors and recently set up an AVGC task force comprising of the industry leaders to prepare a policy roadmap for India to take up a quantum leap in this sector and position us as the preferred post-production hub of the world. A few weeks ago, the world's largest digitization and restoration process of 5,900 films, documentaries, and features was initiated in line with our vision to preserve, protect, and promote our cinematic heritage for our future generations. We are seeing that within India and across the world, the nature of the media business and the content creation, consumption, and distribution has changed. The advent of artificial intelligence, virtual reality, immersive technology, such as the metaverse, presents immense possibilities to India's IT-enabled services and IT-skilled workforce. According to the reports, the OTT market in India is predicted to grow at 21%, 21% annually. Some of are thinking whether it will grow at 21% or not, but let me say, it has been the case even during the pandemic. And while it is going to grow at 21% annually, we are going to reach the 2 billion mark by 2024, and you could see where it is going to touch by 2040. So there is immense potential in the Indian filmmaking industry, content creation. I'm sure with the new scheme, what we have announced yesterday, to help the filmmakers from the world to come and shoot in India, film in India, create content in India, come for the post-production as well. These incentives will help to get and attract more business into India. Today, Indian platforms outnumber foreign ones, and there is a golden rush amongst broadcasters as well as the telcos to set up their own OTT platforms. India is bustling and hustling in its towns and villages. Our tales and talent from the hinterland are capturing the imagination of filmmakers and movie lovers, both in mainstream cinema as well as the OTT platforms, and winning awards on the way. With this in mind, we are also focusing more on developing regional film festivals across the country, of which one which I inaugurated last year was in Ladakh. Ladakh, the festival was at 11,000 feet height where we inaugurated it. Very well accepted, not locally, but nationally as well. Kashi is another, where our Prime Minister Modi comes from, with a rich cultural heritage, one of the oldest towns of the civilization. J&K, one of the heavens on the earth, Jammu and Kashmir.
So these are the few names I'm just mentioning. There are such festivals all over India in various regions and states. Looking ahead, one can boldly say that what India creates today is being consumed by the world tomorrow. We are perfectly poised to take another leap as nearly 300 million citizens are set to connect online as India marches ahead in cementing its space in the commerce of the media and entertainment sector. Government policies are aimed at boosting India's media and entertainment ecosystem, which is a sunrise sector expected to generate nearly $53 billion annually. The opportunities India offers to the world to connect, communicate, create, and in terms of choice as well as consumptions are unlike anywhere in the world. And this is why Prime Minister Modi and his government aims to do the following to unleash the potential of this sector, transforming India into a global content subcontinent, and use the skill of our youth to make the India the preferred post-production hub for the AVGC sector. We will take all the necessary measures to speed up the co-production collaborations from around the world, also offer the best locations and the historical locations in India for film shoots. India offers to the world a young aspirational demographic market, and that is online, with another 400 million about to log on, which in itself is huge, unlike any other market in the world. We will continue to actively engage with the industry to expand the animal spirits of the media and entertainment industry so that Indian companies, global investors, and the players need not look further. We firmly believe that in the next 5 years, with collaborative efforts, our nation, Bharat, will be amongst the leading quality content producing nations across the globe. कहते हैं कि अगर किसी चीज़ को दिल से चाहो तो पूरी कायनात उसे तुम्हारे से मिलाने की कोशिश में लग जाती है. And I'm sure our efforts, not only from the government side but for the entire cinema fraternity, will be there to make India the content subcontinent of the world. They say, and if I have to translate that into English for your benefit, it means they say if you want something with your heart, then the entire universe works to help you get it. And I'm sure not only Indians but others also help us to get it. And that is why the land of storytellers is on the spotlight of the cinematic world today and ready to engage and collaborate. So I extend an invitation to the global players, global filmmakers, to come and shoot in India, enjoy our hospitality, our breathtaking landscapes, our ancient history, and take advantage of our technological prowess in post-production and much more. क्योंकि ये बस अभी ट्रेलर है, पिक्चर तो बाकी है मेरे दोस्त. So this is mere trailer. The movie is yet to be released. Thank you for listening to me and being here. Thank you. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. And I now hand over the podium to Ms. Vani Tripathi Tikku, Member CBFC, to lead the discussion.
Good morning, everybody. Namaskar. Bonjour. We are here at a momentous time in history where India is tagged as the honor country for Marshido film this year. And we have the presence of some formidable industry leaders today amongst us who will be here to inquire how India is emerging as a content hub and what kind of influence generation is happening within the festival now and what resonance will it have for the world around us. Let me start by, Minister Sir, would you be up with us at the podium? Okay. Mr. Anurag Singh Thakur, whose brilliant keynote address you just heard. Shekhar Kapoor, globally renowned filmmaker and chairman of the Film and Television Institute of India. Shri Prasoon Joshi, poet, lyricist, screenwriter, and chairperson, Central Board of Film Certification. Shri Apurva Chandraji, Secretary, Information and Broadcasting, Ministry, Government of India. Scott Roxburgh, editor of Hollywood Reporter. Philip Averill, formidable producer with a great India story which he will share with you today. And last but not the least, somebody who's premiering his film tonight, R. Madhavan, actor, producer, writer, and now also a director. Thank you, gentlemen. You can take your seats. So, friends, in 1946, just about 6 months before India gained its independence, Indian cinema made its mark at the very first Cannes Film Festival by winning what was called the Grand Prix of cinema, which is now called the Palme d'Or. Chetan Anand, with his Neecha Nagar, made history with the narrative of the underdog and what a nation to be born would be going through. So many decades later, films like Lunchbox, Masan, Shaji Karun's famous film Piravi, which is also in the Cannes Classic this year, his other film which he cinematographed, Thumb, are all making waves and have been so. But today, with the changing narrative of content and how we look at stories around us, the land of Kathavachaks or storytellers is also going through a huge transformation. So today we inquire that transformation with leaders from the industry, thought leaders, people who know their job of not just telling stories, but also bringing stories to a world of many, many influencers. Today, opinion gets created in 30 seconds, 30 minutes, and 300 minutes. I would start with Shekhar Kapoor, who has been talking about immersive storytelling for a long time. Last year, we did a research paper together on changing narratives digitally and also immersive storytelling and what influences it generates to the world. How is India the most immersive storyteller today, Shekhar? And what will it do to generate influence around it globally?
Hi, is that working? Yeah?
Yes, it
Can
is.
you hear me? All right. So my biggest fear right now is I'm about to turn into, if I haven't already turned into a dinosaur. Here's what's happening. The next films, when we talk about India, I'm talking about India in the future. We are one of the cheapest broadband connected nation in the world. We are one of the highest connectivity in the world, right? We have the largest technological resources in terms of engineers and computers and AI in the world. We have the highest number of current film technicians, cameramen, editors, costume designers, writers, directors. There are more directors currently shooting in India right now, I promise you, than currently every day than all the films that are being made in the UK. Currently, right? So, where is this leading to? My competitor now is no longer another filmmaker in this form. We've created this form of filmmaking, a 2-hour film, for a reason. My competitor is this little boy who's 14 years old, and he has access to broadband, and he wants to influence the world. That's what he or she, they want to do. Somebody, a little 18-year-old girl, wants to take up her smartphone and say, this is Anuradha speaking to the world. It's 8 a.m. and 20 million people will tune into her, sitting in her village, talking to people. How does that relate to film? What is film? Film is emotional connectivity. That kid that I'm talking about that is going to talk to the world will create a TikTok video, a 30-second video, or if by then, a 1-minute video, and that will go viral. Millions and millions of people will watch it. And who am I then? I'm a dinosaur. I'm still stuck to a technology, and I say, no, film means 2 hours, and I have to get great critic reviews, I have to have a huge box office. What box office? We have only 800. Going to have 800 million cell phone connections. That's cinema theaters. Each cell phone connection is a cinema theaters. So your brilliant speech, sir, The only thing I differ with you, it's not $57 billion, it's $1 trillion. Because the accentuation of this kid, the millions of kids influence the world. So India is about to become the world's biggest influence economy. Because these kids are like Jack in the Box, they'll come out and say, and influence the culture of the world. And ultimately, cultural domination, just forget it, I'll take away domination. Cultural influencing leads to business influencing. Business doesn't come out before culture, culture comes first. So we're going head to head, and we're going to have to redefine what we mean by cinema. It's just emotional connection between people. People getting emotionally connected is what cinema is all about. If it doesn't take 2 hours, it takes 1 minute, a minute.
So within the redefinition that you speak of, Prasoon Joshi, who's also a brand guru, he's not just a lyricist and a poet and a writer, also a regulator, wears many, many hats. You always said that domestic brand is wanting to go global. We are brilliant with our domestic influence. We are one of the largest film producing nations of the world. And yet we are aspirational, and our aspiration is like a bullet train, a Japanese Shinkansen, which is going to go tearing apart and is going to be aspirationally turning global. Where do these two narratives meet, and how do you see the story unfold?
Well, first of all, I think thank you, Kans, for focusing on India. I think India is daring to go. मैं इंडिया को अगर हिंदी में एक लाइन में करूं तो बेचैन सपने मुझे इंडिया लगता है. Restless dreams is what I often in briefing sessions and all that, when you have to just say what is India today, it's actually restless dreams. Whether you go in startups, you go in content, everywhere you're seeing this restlessness of doing something, not looking back but looking forward. I think that said, when we talk about organically India being, are we talking about content consumers from India or content creators from India? Content consumer is seeing India as a market, how to reach out to those people. Every brand is trying to do that. That's a different reality. When we talk about content creators, and today we are talking about content creation here, coming from India. How can you take Indian content? Because organically we have grown content sort of market. That's happening. And there, if you go the way Scott, we were talking yesterday, the Korea approach. That's the approach to understand the market in the world and say, what can India design for this market? So you understood these are the tastes, this is the way, these are the cultural code, this is the lexicon, and how can I take India and what can be produced in India and make it palatable for all the market, and reach out to them. And that's what Korea did, in a sense. A K-pop or a K-drama reached out with a Korean flavor, reached out and catered to the market of the world. Now the second approach, where I feel, and Anuragji will be with me on that India is also dying to tell their own story, its own story. Our own ideas, our own stories. And for which we were talking yesterday, we were talking about a certain wiring. See, you are brought up with a certain cultural wiring. You consume symbols. You consume... See, I have a theory, like you look at something, a girl coming to you on a picture, and she has something on her forehead which is red. An Indian will immediately decode it, that she's a married woman and she has got sindoor on her head. First thing will be that. That's cultural eye. In absence of this cultural eye, your organism's eye kicks in. And you see the same thing. A woman approaching me, she has a red mark on her head. Maybe she is hurt. Maybe there is blood there. In absence of the knowledge of the fact that the married woman wear a red symbol, you consume the same image differently. Now, yes, Indian stories and Indian, we've been brought up to consume them in a certain way. But that's where the challenge is. This is a more complex task when we want to tell your stories and you feel they are worth telling. And they are worth telling. They are fabulous. How do you reach out with those stories? It can not only be done at the cinema level. It has to be done when you're going to institutes, studying and other cultural forums, books, discussions, festivals, where you try and decode the culture. If the world is interested in India, you'll start decoding. We did it with many other cultures. We did it with the Western culture when it came to India. Why can't that be done by the rest of the world to consume that culture? Because there is something fabulous. Every culture, I'm not being nationalistic in saying that. Every culture actually in the world has something unique to offer. I would hate a world which is standardized. So, and India, another thing which is important in this context is diversity, which India understands. वो कहते हैं कि कोस पे पानी बदले चार कोस पे बानी. कोस पे पानी बदले चार कोस पे बानी. Every kilometer you walk, you have a different language in India. Now, a country which is so comfortable and communicating has been making cinema and content for people where every kilometer you have a different language. Please understand, when we go to the world, why would we connect?
So decoding...
We are so used to diversity in a true sense.
So diversity, decoding culture are, hallmark acronyms here. And Scott, you've often argued that the aspirational part of India globally, with a large domestic market, which not just produces such large number of films, also generates revenue for that kind of, content which is created. When that gets aspirational, what does it mean in terms of its global contextuality? You were talking glaringly about it yesterday. Today, what just now Prasoonji said and Shekhar says, India also being digitally aspirational. What is this story as far as its global influence is concerned?
Yeah, thank you very much first for inviting me to talk here. I think I'm maybe less boisterous about the potential for Indian content internationally,
just because of its incredible strength of its local market. If I could compare it to anything, I'd compare it to China, which has a similar incredibly strong domestic market. It's now the second or largest box office territory in the world, but has not been able to really export its films, even though they make huge films, very distinct films about their own culture and history. They haven't really managed to cross over to the international market. And I would argue that India hasn't either, despite having a very long history of cinema, having a great tradition of storytelling. The type of Indian storytelling that is so appealing to the Indian market has not yet crossed over to the international. And I'm not sure if it will, because it's not just about having the talent, it's just not just about having the ability to make stories. There's something else that's needed, and I'm not sure. It'll be interesting to see. I see the great ambition coming out of India, and the potential is obvious. But I think there are a lot of other components, and it's not something that can be easily programmed, especially not from a government. This is perhaps not the place to be political, but the any connection, when the government gets very involved in culture, if they get too involved, the culture ends up, suffering, in my opinion. And we've seen as well, just recently with Russia, the culture, the artists of a country can become tainted by association if the government does something that is viewed as controversial or problematic internationally. So I think,
despite what we're all talking about the incredible potential of the Indian market and Indian artists to be seen and for their culture to be spread internationally, I think it's a much more difficult task than it might seem to be when you just quote numbers and say how many amazing artists and the amazing growth and whatever. I think there's a lot of other challenges that India faces when it tries to export it.
So Apurv ji, Scott says government should not be getting involved in culture.
I didn't say they shouldn't be getting involved. I say they should be hands off in terms of they can create structures.
I'm creating a hypothesis here, Scott. And we were discussing yesterday about education and creation of opportunities for education and cinema. So In terms of governance terms, what do you think should be happening as policy initiatives when you want to look at how much involvement should governance have with the creation of content, and the absolute big ticket announcement that the Honorable Minister did yesterday with amazing incentivization which is happening for independent cinema and filmmakers. What is the story next as far as our own domestic market and taking it globally, and the help that government can do? How does it all interconnect, with you and the consciousness around governance right now?
First, I would like to respond to Scott as a film buff and less as a government officer, because I have been watching films, Indian films, for a very, very long time, and there are there are Indian stories which have human values and which are common throughout the world. Today itself, Madhavan will be premiering his Rocketry. It is a human story which is typically Indian, but will resonate throughout the world. Similarly, yesterday, Mr. Nawazuddin Siddiqui was here with us, Gangs of Wasipur, a typical Indian story, but applies to large parts of the world. Then, Lunchbox, a film which was financed by NFDC, which is part of government. NFDC was a producer of Lunchbox. A film about Dabbawalas, those who carry lunchboxes in suburban trains of Mumbai. Very, very typical story, but human emotions which resonate, throughout the world. Then one of my favorite films, Mr. and Mrs. Iyer. One of the finest films on Hindu-Muslim unity, and again, it is a subject which is typically Indian, but the way it is presented in the backdrop of riots in Assam, it is something to be, which is to be seen by the entire world. There have been Indian stories which a lot of the world has been interested in. Now with the diaspora of India getting recognition throughout the world, increasing throughout the world, films like Lion, Life of Pi, which have been made, Slumdog Millionaire, which have been made by foreign filmmakers but are typically Indian. And then apart from that, there are a lot of Indian films which are getting attention in other parts of the world, like our Three Idiots of Dangal, which did very well in China. Then yesterday I met Mr. Ahmed Golchin, who is a producer and distributor of Triple R. He was there in Dubai, and he said that he is translating Triple R into Persian and distributing only for Iran. So that again is a very, very important thing, that people in Iran would be interested in watching Triple R in Persian. When I was in Dubai, I went to MBC, and MBC, they said that they are interested in Indian serials and would like to dub it into Arabic and show it in the Middle East. So that is how the Indian stories are carrying. There's a lot of traction in the Middle East or in Latin America and other parts of the world. As far as the government is concerned, yesterday the minister announced that we will be giving incentives, and NFTC also is now being empowered. A lot of funds are being made available to NFTC. There has been a hiatus for some time that NFTC could not really fund quality cinema, but now we have provided the funds, and we look forward to NFTC also promoting a lot of cinema, and we expect that such cinema would be part of Cannes in future film festivals. Also, we will enhance our cooperation. Today we have cooperation with 15 countries. We have entered into a collaboration with Invest India, which largely looks at industries. But now, in terms of this particular sector, Invest India will assist us in taking forward these collaborations with other countries, attracting filmmakers from across the world to come and shoot in India. They will engage with such filmmakers wherever they are, because they have these facilities available throughout the world, and we look forward to more and more people participating in India in future. Thank you.
Before I come to Philip and of course Madhavan Shekhar, we've been talking about globalization in a different context for a long time.
I think what Scott said was very important. But we need to argue this. I'll tell you why we need to argue this. I was shooting with Heath Ledger just before he passed away, just before Joker. And I suddenly realized in Morocco, where I was filming, everybody left the sets of Star Wars to come to see Heath Ledger. And I suddenly realized they hadn't come to see Heath Ledger. They thought that I, from India, am shooting a Bollywood film with Shah Rukh Khan. You know? There is nowhere that I can go right now without everybody saying, where in the way? You see, because we have an attitude that the people who can judge us can only judge us from a Western point of view. Where does, you ask me the difference? We are melodramatic people. We celebrate melodrama, and I'll tell you what I'm coming to. We think that death is melodramatic. We think that falling in love is melodramatic. Or that's what you think. We think it's mythic. I think being born is a mythic idea. Being falling in love, being betrayed, dying, everything is mythology. In the West, somehow, there is some kind of shyness of accepting this as mythology. So why am I getting to this? I did a film called Elizabeth, my first film outside India. And I'm thinking, how am I going to do this? This is the biggest queen, most famous queen in the world, actually. And I'm an Indian filmmaker coming out to make my first film. How do I do this? I said, yeah, actually, I'm a mythic idea. To me, everything about Elizabeth was mythic. And when I was shooting it, everybody said, Shekhar, that's so melodramatic. That's so melodramatic. I said, no, it's mythic. Actually, the reviews also said, it's a very melodramatic film. And I said, yes. They said, it's a Bollywood film. I said, yes. And then we got nominated for 9 Oscars. And Elizabeth and Kate Blanchett became one of the biggest stars in the world. There is this conflict between the West and the East. The West seems to be losing out. I can promise you to lose out because not accepting that we are melodramatic beings. Human beings are melodramatic and mythic at the same time. We celebrate mythology. That's why Chinese films are not coming abroad yet, because the world in Western cinema, the critics, haven't yet learned to celebrate the idea of living mythically. Take me on, Scott.
Yeah. No, I think it's very interesting you say, and it's. I think I would argue that it comes from a form of translation. I think what you did with Elizabeth was a very compelling translation of Indian cinema making, emotional, the way you were talking about, this melodramatic, mythic cinema making, with a very Western story in a lot of ways. And you were able to translate the language into something else which was then understandable for an international audience. I think what can be difficult is getting the untranslated version, if I can say it that way. I think that's with a lot of Chinese cinema, for example, the big sort of blockbuster cinema that they produce. It's not that they aren't telling compelling stories and doing it in a very distinctive Chinese way. It's that for audiences outside of China, they don't quite understand the language. They don't quite get it. And I don't think it's enough to say, well, you should become more mythic or understand the mythic. I think Western audiences can. They just haven't been used to seeing cinema that way and seeing stories told that way. So they need some form of translation. And that translation can come in taking a very Western story and telling it in a very Indian way, which is, I think, what you did with Elizabeth. It can come in other ways as well. But I think you need that. I would argue that's sort of what Korea has done with it. They tell very Korean stories, and they do it in a very Korean way, but they have such an influence, they have taken so much Western influence into their storytelling that they are very easily translatable and easily understandable. Parasite, for me, could have been a Spielberg movie, but it's told in a very Korean way with a very specific Korean setting. But they've managed to find that translation, and I think that's what India has to do if it wants to reach international alliances with its storytelling, to find a form of translation. Doesn't mean being untrue to the core of the mythic core that you're talking about. Doesn't mean that at all. But it needs something in order for, you can't just expect audiences to understand who don't know the culture, who don't have the tradition, and don't know all the films that you might be referencing and so forth, the stories. You need something, because most people are coming into it.
But Scott, domestic content produced in India is seen by 127 countries at the same time. Also, the advent of the digital era that we are a part of, very much like the OTT streaming devices, a a story set in Mumbai or in the hinterland of Uttar Pradesh becomes absolutely global in 30 seconds because 127 countries are watching it. And by the end of the week, it's trending, not just on social media, it's also trending. So, are we being myopic by just looking at or inquiring this further, looking at stories only contained in the geographical boundaries that they are produced in? Or do we have to,
One more thing which we are actually ignoring. See, this is an absolute new reality we are living in. Culture is a living, throbbing organism. It's complete, as we speak, it's getting shaped. And the world we are living in today has hyper interaction. And the way it's not a static identity that when we say this is Western mind, I think this all is getting now subsumed, all these identities. And we are, as Shekhar a while back said, that a village girl is shooting a 15-second reel TikTok, and we are getting videos from which country we don't even know, and we suddenly agnostic to the source. Now, content will gradually become so agnostic in the nature when you would not be first searching the source and then enjoying it. Because simultaneously the cultural exposure through other means is also increased. So as we are evolving, I think considering culture as a static identity would not be correct. It is evolving. And in that context, Indian stories, and again I will say with authenticity, somebody needs to be very cognizant of authenticity because world requires pure diversity. Standardization could be a dream of a marketeer, but cannot be a dream of a creative person.
On which point I must get Philip Averill, one of the producers who very long ago invested his mind space into Indian storytelling. A producer who worked with many, many languages, including Tamil and Malayalam. And also, the diversity which Prasoonji is talking about, Philip has deeply invested his roots into working with Indian directors, storytellers, writers for many, many years. Philip, cultural exposure versus globalization. What is your choice right here?
First of all, to reply, I think the cultural Indian identity is all... sorry. Yes. Is also under influences, under the worldwide influences, as everywhere. So we have to define a new cultural identity of India, but it's not a new identity. It's identities, because between Kerala and Andhra Pradesh, it's not exactly the same. It's not the same language, it's the same culture, it's the same past, it's different. So what is very interesting with India, you are on top for all the technologies, all the progress of possibility to spread away all the contents. That's absolutely impressive. And at the same level, I think you have also to invent. I'm looking for new filmmakers, inventing new ways to new stories, contemporary stories. And that is really not an agency, because you have a lot of talents. But to find ways to communicate with the world, to find bridges. And that's maybe what I did by the past, is to create some cooperation, some co-production with filmmakers, and to find ways through the markets, through the co-production market, through many ways. And like look at Goa, it's the film bazaar. It's a very great thing. And you should develop this kind of initiatives, because like this, India could have more films all over the world. I think culturally it's pretty important for me.
And Philip, you've often argued that the government has to create a support structure for independent cinema, We were also talking about it yesterday. You always say, contrary to what is otherwise spoken, why should the government get involved with, many things which are about free expression and creativity and so on. But you, on the other hand, have always said that support funding from the government creates the ecosystem for young filmmakers. Tell us a little more about that, because I think that is the developing story after the big incentives that the Honorable Minister has spoken of.
First of all, every country has to invent its own ecosystem. Yes, you're right, absolutely right. And you did something very great with the film incentives, the 30% film incentive. It's a big progress. But you have to find a sort of cocktail between public money, public funding, private funding, film incentives, many things like that, because, of course, you have a situation some other countries doesn't have. You're not in Europe, for instance, we have always the support of television for making a film. It's not, I think it's not the case in India, for instance. So you have to find ways. And what is sure that when a country is deciding to make in place a very important and promising film funding, immediately you have a boost for the film industry in the country. And it's profitable for everyone, not only for the author film, but also for the commercial film in brackets.
So the boost that Philip Averill talks about is sitting right next to me. one of the most formidable actors of our times has, for the first time, turned a director, a writer, and a producer all in one go. He did not miss even a single bus here. And he is premiering his brand new film, Rocketry, tonight, which is the pride, bouquet that India brings to Mashadu film. Madhavan, you are the biggest example of the developing and the evolving India story, right? Within the narrative of creation, you are telling a story, you are exhibiting it, people will be consuming it tonight. Tell us, for you, what does this moment, what does it become for you right now?
Thank you. I think this moment, and to answer your question right away, is a step in a direction that I've wanted our country to take for a very, very long time. When the Prime Minister of India, when he started his term, he introduced the microeconomy and digital currency. There was a furrow around the world among the economic community which said, this is not going to work, it's a disaster. Because how are you going to get the farmers and the people who are uneducated in small villages to handle a small phone or smartphone and handle their accounting? Microeconomy was considered going to be a big disaster in India. In a couple of years, that whole story changed and India became one of the largest users of microeconomy in the world. And you know why that happened? It's because the farmers didn't need to be educated to use a phone to know if they've got their money, who the money they have sent to, and has it been hitting their account or not. That is new India. When I look at my Honorable Minister, he is a Minister of Sports as well as Information and Broadcasting. He looks like he can be an actor and a sportsman. It is not the case earlier on, so that is new India for me. I have seen my leaders in the last 52 years that I've been go around the world, India being considered sometimes as a third world country. I've seen our leaders stand in line and wait to do namaste to other leaders and feel enthralled because the American president or the British prime minister actually shook hands with them. Today, if I may say, finding it honorable to do a namaste to an India, I've seen that namaste go from being an act of kowtow or a differential to somebody between two individuals who are equal in stature and mutual respect. That is new India. And I have a problem with the kind of content that we are not doing. We've always been a cultural hub. We've been, our traditions, as you all said, and as Scott answering your question, for thousands of years we have great tradition and culture that we can talk about that has been exemplary to the world over. But there's one aspect of India that is so aspirational today that we as filmmakers or people who are talking about India are completely ignoring. And that is the excellence in science and technology. You know, when a Christopher Nolan makes a film called Inception or Interstellar, the reviewers go there afraid that they hope they get what he's trying to say, because they don't want to give a review and sound like an idiot because they didn't get it, because they know it's a scientist who's making a movie. That's how qualified he is. You know, I still haven't understood Inception till now. I still want to know why the damn thing is going around in the end of the film. But I have awe and respect for the guy because he has that much of knowledge about science. And he is absolutely unconcerned about the fact that the audience may or may not get it. That sort of bravado, the kind of step that Shekhar Kapoor took when he went to do Elizabeth, you know, it was a pioneering movement. And, you know, you're going to make a story about a royalty of a different country, and, you know, you have the guts to say it the way you want to say it. And the merit of that is for everybody to see. It's just the conviction came through without having to try hard. He just was being himself. What I'm trying to say is, from Arya Bhatta to Sundar Pichai, we have such extraordinary stories as far as science and technology is concerned. We are not making movies about these people. These people are the aspirations for the youngsters around the world. They have bigger fans than stars and actors put together. You have these guys from Uttar Pradesh and Madhya Pradesh that I've met who have started this new metaverse, who are into Web 3.0, 15.3 billion worth as of today, starting their companies in other parts of the world, where Facebook and Amazon are actually coming to meet up with them saying, we want to be part of your metaverse. These guys are actually heroes of their small villages and towns. I have gone to their meeting, and I'm telling you, Prasunji, it will really look like you mohalla ke katte pe baithe ho. Bande aise baat kar rahe hain, sab, they are worth $15.6 billion. Wow. We're not making movies about these success stories.
What it reminds me, if you remember, I had written a scene for Rang De Basanti.
Exactly.
He voiced these dialogues before. One film I wrote, Rang De Basanti, and he is talking about that time. You're talking about how, yes, India will be.
By the way, Rang De Basanti was not one film you wrote. Rang De Basanti was a hallmark of aspirational India and what the youth really wanted to be. It created that kind of history which has paved way for young filmmakers and young stars like Madhavan, to, you know, take that one leap forward and become who they wish to be. Obviously, as a very famous candy ad in India said, the argument continues. And I would want this conversation to continue even outside this hall. But before we close, I want closing remarks on this formidable debate that we have unleashed. In the very much in the evolutionary land of metaverse, content creation, cinema, filmmaking, storytelling, kathavachan, India is the new developing story. How do we all see this? Closing remarks, I want to start with the Honorable Minister, who heard us very patiently for the last hour. And then we will go chronologically towards the left and the right.
I think I was glued to, what was coming from this side to that side, but that is what we are looking at. As a facilitator, as a government, I think we are here not only to give incentive, but also to handhold, to facilitate the creative minds, to collaborate and bring the Indian stories, not only for the Indian market, but for the global market. And I'm sure we have a lot to tell, as I said earlier, with the 6,000-year-old plus civilization. There's a lot to tell, as Madhavan said, from the smallest villages and how they are making it big, not only in the IT-enabled services, but many other sectors also. But that depends upon the filmmakers, which subject they pick, and what is the storyline, whether it could be consumed locally or globally. They know how to make it, as India is known for masala movie, spices, not for the flavor, but I think a lot of content which not only the songs, dance or others, but it is something to do with the Indian culture, Indian real stories as well. So I'm sure with people like you who are willing to commit and contribute towards the India story, we are here just to facilitate. And I can just reassure you that Indian government will leave no stone unturned to facilitate the Indian filmmakers and the global filmmakers. Please do come to India for filmmaking and also for the content creation. Thank you.
Shekhar. Sorry, Prasunji.
I'm older.
You're still not a dinosaur, though.
Once my
I
age
vouch
was-
for it. You're not a dinosaur as yet.
Vaniji, before you end, you also ask Ricky Cage is also here.
Of
He can also
course,
contribute at some time.
of course.
This
Shekhar.
event is not a celebration of the present or the past. This event is a celebration of the future. And we have to redefine what we mean by media and entertainment, right? The fact that Marvel creates, they spend as much money or even much more money on marketing something than they do in creating something. Much more melodramatic than any Indian film I've seen. The performances are, I was always told, make sure your actors don't perform like Indian actors. What the hell are they doing? Right? Marketing. Now the studio power of marketing is collapsing because one little girl from a small town or village in India will get up and beat them. It's the new world. It's a democracy of media and entertainment. For whatever we say, yes, Twitter is going through huge problems. I don't know what Elon Musk is going to do with it. But the fact is that the young people in India, with all that technology, as he said, the new AI use. I am teaching the use of AI at MIT for storytelling. It's going to change everything. And the new stories will come from restless people, restless kids. And they'll come from kids that have access to technology. And they will change the world. And they, in India, we have a vast number of them. And they will create, sir, the new $1 trillion economy. Yeah? Okay. Thank you.
Prasunji.
No, I completely agree with, can't disagree with Shekhar what he's saying. He's so optimistic, and we've been talking about this for a long time, and he believes in it. And as I was telling Sonam a while back, that I think India, when we keep saying India is changing, India's time has come, in the corporate world, you see a lot of these startups and these which have so much of self-belief. There is so much of self-belief that this app I'm working on is going to make it big. And I think culturally, the same confidence of India needs to reflect. That what I am, I'm not apologetic about, and I can say it the way I want to say. I think that confidence is now coming to India. And I'm hopeful about that. Any civilization, when can express its core authentically, then it is completely, right. See, in the metaverse, in the virtual reality world, you use the word immersive. Why Indian civilization is need to be studied little more sort of carefully. See, storytelling in India is because the civilization is a continuum. Even before books were invented, were not written, oral tradition was telling stories. That's why the style of rhyming, the way we write, everything has certain memorability to it. It's built in. Because it's from that time, the civilization has been continuing. And storytelling has been almost a part of preserving culture and taking it forward. So it's not only entertainment, the storytelling was very much part and parcel of the necessity of the civilization as it evolved. So that's the reason it's important to see what and how storytelling has evolved in India and why it has such a significant part. In Bharatanatyam Shastra, the grantha, the literature which is written about, acting and all in India, is something called Rasauppatti. It means the moment is immersive. The linear story is not important. Where the story, used to see Indian minds are like that. When they used to get into the theater, the guy will ask the other guy, "Pehla gana nikal gaya kya? Has the first song gone?" He's not asking him that how much story I have missed. He's not come there for the story. He has come there for that moment. In the immersive world today, we are seeing the emergence of that. People want to be immersed in that particular. The linear storytelling, of course, it will stay. But linear storytelling was not the only storytelling which stayed in India. There was an immersive moment, which was the moment, that's why Navarasas were there. I was immersed in Karunaras. I was immersed in Hasya. I was immersed in pathos or glory. So that moment was complete in itself. It had no beginning, it had no end. And I think in VR world, we are seeing these immersive stories now, which are not necessarily, trying to give a message or trying to complete itself. It is a suspended moment, which is a new reality, which is very familiar to India. So I think the new world will see a lot of India, which they haven't seen before. And the confidence which should be there in our civilization to tell our stories authentically will take us forward. Thank you.
Apurvji, we are really short on time. I'm getting some kind of indication, but yeah. So.
The minister has already spoken about the incentives and the other things, the facilitation which the government of India is going to do. I would also like to add that the state governments in India, where most of the shooting takes place, they are also very, very keen to promote filming in their states. States like Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, they have announced very substantive incentive policies. Today in Cannes also we have the government of Delhi, government of Maharashtra who are here. They have also announced their own incentive policies and also facilitation. And most of these states are now joined to Film Facilitation Office for online clearances of shooting, which will also assist in a big way. So we invite the foreign filmmakers to come to India. Thank you.
Philip.
Nothing to add. That I felt very impressive with your speech, actually, and yes.
Scott.
Well, yeah,
Scott.
Yes, yeah. Well, I also should say, of course, as a journalist, I'm skeptical by profession, so that's an ingrained aspect. But of course, I think it would be ridiculous to bet against India. I mean, the potential there is undeniable. I guess what I was trying to say with criticism or talking about the problem with politics is that I think. Politics can set up structures, they can set up a thing, but anytime politics gets too involved in culture, I think it hinders and can poison the culture, if I'm being very straightforward. What I think, if the potential of India is to be realized culturally and also exported around the world, it has to be done so by the people and the creators within India and not from a top-down way, and by unleashing actually what you were talking about, which I think are the greatest strengths of India, which is its tremendous diversity, religious, ethnic, cultural, and its unbelievable, deep, and for a worldwide audience, untold well of stories. And if that is done, then of course there are no limits. I just hope that the culture of India doesn't become in any way more politicized, because I think that could be to detriment of both Indians, but also to the audiences around the world who want to see their stories.
Madhavan?
One of the ways that content becomes international and consumed is the fact that it becomes aspirational. The Koreans have become successful because they're unabashed about how they don't want to appease the rest of the world. They're very Korean in their nature. And that's why my son wants to see it. We have such aspirational stories coming out of our country. I mean, from the fact that we had arguably the most advanced navy in the Rajaraja Cholan times, where we went all the way to Angkor Wat to build temples. You know, those kind of aspirational stories till today, when out of the top 2,500 companies, you have Indian CEOs heading 14 of them. It can't be a coincidence. There has to be true stories over there that are so aspirational that we just have to bring out and tell them. And I think if we're able to make those stories aspirational, of which we have many opportunities in India, we will be as much a global player as Hollywood is. And I would argue that in terms of number of footfalls, not the dollars, but in terms of the footfalls, I don't think India is very far behind, because you're not just talking about 1.4 billion people from India. We're talking about Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, the Middle East, which gets engulfed in this culture as well. And if you have the accountability of the number of people seeing this movie, and if you're able to actually monetize that and come back, I can argue that Indian films and content will make as much money, if not more, as compared to the rest of the world.
The one son of India who's not just aspirational, he turned aspiration into an award. Ricky Cage, Grammy Award winner, son of the soil, is right here with us. Also one closing remark from you, Ricky.
Thank you so much for allowing me to do this. And I mean, I love the discussions. It was absolutely wonderful. So I'm just going to speak a little bit about my perspective. The thing is that I'm a musician, and I'm strongly Indian in my content and the way that I think and the way that I create my music. And I did not want to change my identity, but I wanted to break cultural barriers. So the only way I felt that I could do it after trying many times is through collaboration. My first major collaboration was with a South African musician. I won my first Grammy for that. My second collaboration was this year with Stuart Copeland, that is the former drummer of the Police from America, and I won my second Grammy for that. And both albums are very strongly Indian. It's just that I got a new perspective on how to dress up the songs. So I believe that the same could apply even to films. I think collaboration becomes really important to break cultural barriers, because sometimes to see our own culture from a different perspective sometimes helps us out. And that's the reason why the films, I believe, at least I may be naive in my thinking, but the films which have actually broken cultural barriers in India are films made by filmmakers who have had a lot of experience living abroad, or because they understand things from a different perspective. Or the second thing is that, they are from filmmakers who are foreign, and they're looking at India from a different angle or from a different lens. So I believe that collaboration becomes really important to actually move further and to take things forward without losing our identity, keeping our strong identity, but just dressing it up in a way that is contextualized, as Prasunji said. Because I think art, tradition, and culture always needs to be contextualized when it needs to be palatable to a wider audience. That's it.
We can't let you go without you humming a line for us.
I don't sing, actually. So whatever little fans that I have, if I sing, they're going to run away. So it's better. I really do not sing.
Spoiled sport. So friends, we are no more the land of snake charmers, tigers and lions that we were supposed to be narrated as. We are an aspirational country. We are a country of so many million stories. V.S. Naipaul famously wrote a book called India, A Million Mutinies Ahead. Today we are drafting and crafting a story where India, a billion stories ahead. Thank you so much, the Khan Mashadu Film Directorate, for giving us the opportunity to laying out the agenda for what holds the future as far as Indian storytelling is concerned. I will round off this argument, which will continue for a bit and couple of years maybe, by a famous line from one of my most favorite Hindi poets, Jaishankar Prasad. And this was about the independence when Neecha Nagar was probably being made, that he probably wrote this, and it's so pertinent even today. Himadri Tunga Shringa se Prabuddha Shuddha Bharati, Swayam Prabha Samujwala Swatantrata Pukarati, Amartya Veer Putra ho Drid Pratigya Soch lo, Prashasth Punya Panth hai, Badhe Chalo, Badhe Chalo. This is the way forward. March on is what our mantra is. Thank you so much, Anurag ji, Prasoon ji, Shekhar ji, Apurv Chandra ji. Philip, keep helping us telling stories. Scott, I hope you change your mind. Maddie, congratulations. Congratulations for the premiere and open invite for Rocketry tonight. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Namaskar, Jai Hind.